Well, hello, my kindred spirits. How in the world are y'all doing today? I hope that every one of you are doing great, and I'm so glad to be back with you today. I have a fun video that I think you're really going to enjoy hearing. Now, last week I told you about this book called The Fairy Tale Girl by Susan Branch. I have many of her books. She is a wonderful author, and more than that, she's a wonderful illustrator. She just makes the most beautiful little illustrations, and her life story is one of a fairy tale. It really is. And I'm going to read you one of the stories out of this book because it is my favorite. But my hope is that you will also become a Susan Branch fan. Now, she has completed, I believe, 3 novels now. But she doesn't just write novels. She writes cookbooks, and her illustrations are beautiful. She used to have calendars. I don't know if they put out Susan Branch calendars anymore, but her cookbooks, oh my goodness, they are so good. A couple of weeks ago, I made a recipe from one of her cookbooks, and it was a hazelnut stuffed chicken, hazelnut and cornbread stuffed chicken with a pear cream sauce. Oh, it was so good. And my husband was crazy about it, and I will make that one very often because we just loved it. So she has a lot of good recipes and, again, illustrations that are some of my most favorite in the world. As a matter of fact, her illustrations are made of watercolor. And her illustrations were the catalyst that got me started watercolor painting on a more serious level back in 2014. So I think that you will really enjoy her too, and especially though this book, Fairy Tale Girl. Now, so a couple of things. Let me tell you this. Everybody's favorite aunt and my favorite YouTuber, Kim from Angel on My Shoulder, is using this book as her July book of the month. And so you can get this on Amazon, and you can get it from thrift books or the library. But I would encourage you to get a copy of it and read along with Kim in July, because it's going to transport you to a different world for just a little while, and we all could use that from time to time. If you are Susan's age, and I believe she was born in 1948, something like that, late 40s. If you're her age, you're going to love the book even more. But maybe you have aunts or grandmothers or mothers who are her age, and you'll kind of get a glimpse into some of the songs and the fashions and the culture that was popular during their young adulthood. So I truly think that you're going to love this book. Now, the story I'm going to read to you today is about the first time, like anybody gets a first time, but the time that she met the Beatles. Now, I'm sure most of you know who the Beatles are, but let me tell you a little bit about them first from my perspective. Then you'll understand why I love that story so much, and we'll dig into it. When I was a little girl, my father was the best storyteller, and he loved the Beatles, and he grew up right at the perfect time for Beatlemania. So when the Beatles first came, I believe it was 1964 when they first came out. And so my father was 13 and his younger sister was 12. And they were wild about this British band from England. And so the first time that they actually saw the Beatles on the Ed Sullivan television show, my father told me he and his sister were sitting there watching it. And to hear him describe the emotion, the excitement, the anticipation of seeing the Beatles standing there singing I Want to Hold Your Hand on the Ed Sullivan Show. You've heard of Beatlemania. My father said that he and his sister were climbing the walls. They were doing backflips. I don't know that they really are, but that was the exuberance that they had towards seeing the Beatles on television, seeing them in person and seeing their personalities. So they absolutely had Beatlemania. And so, with that, I'm going to read you this story because Susan Branch also had Beatlemania. But this, I have read this story a couple of times aloud to family members, even who love the Beatles as well, and they cry when they hear it. It is not crying tears of sadness, just joy. Oh my heavens, just joy. So let's get into the book here. And I do want to show you this really quick too. Her book isn't typed. It is handwritten. This entire novel is handwritten, and she's handwritten 3 of them. This is the way she does all of her books. She handwrites everything, and then she has her little chapters and her little ribbons here to decorate with, and beautiful little illustrations with the butterfly. And this one says, "Just living is not enough," said the butterfly. "One must have sunshine, freedom, and a little flower." And that quote is from Hans Christian Andersen. So here we go. This chapter is chapter 16, and it's called "Swept Away." And she has another quote, and it says, "When I used to read fairy tales, I fancied the kind of things never happened. And now I'm here in the middle of one." Lewis Carroll. While writing this book, I noticed something I never realized before. It wasn't just that I was raised by children, or the baby milk world I grew up in, or even the storybooks I loved that made me think that life would be a fairy tale. Other things happened out of the blue. None of them huge, but odd and out of the ordinary enough to make me take notice. Like the letter from the lady in waiting at Windsor Castle when I was 11, which would seem unimportant and not especially memorable if it wasn't for the other things. Now, I can't say these moments were caused by me or anything I was doing, because most of them showed up as a fate accomplished, but they made me think I was lucky. And thinking you're lucky may be the thing that actually makes you lucky. That's so true. For instance, when I was 9, I met my idol, Shirley Temple. How likely was that? Not very, since there were no movie stars in my neighborhood. But my best friend Karen's dad painted sets for NBC Studios in Burbank. And one Saturday, he had to pick up something at work, and he took us with him. We were walking down an empty hallway, and there, coming toward us, was Shirley Temple. Even though she was all grown up, I recognized her immediately. She looked exactly like she did in Bachelor and the Bobby Soxer. I was starstruck and shy, and forgot to ask her how it was to work with Cary Grant, and never even tried to sing Animal Crackers with her. She leaned down to talk to us, and could not have been nicer to 2 little 9-year-old girls gazing up at her in wonderment. I couldn't wait to get home and tell my mom. A chance meeting with a childhood idol while you're still a child wouldn't be such a big deal. But then there was this, a story I've told many times in my life, usually shortened. This time I'll do the deluxe version. And I'm going to show you a couple of pictures here. So it says, in 1964, when we were 17 and still in high school, Karen and I bought $4 tickets to see the Beatles perform at the Hollywood Bowl. $4, can you imagine? On the big day, we drove from our neighborhood in the San Fernando Valley to Hollywood in my parents' 1959 Chevy station wagon. I would never let any 17-year-old of mine take a giant floater of a station wagon on the Ventura Freeway into Hollywood. Good thing I wasn't my mom. It was a clear, bright August evening at the famous amphitheater that was carved from a hillside in the 1920s. We could barely hear the music over the din of thousands of screaming teenagers, but that didn't matter. I'm going to put on my glasses here. We could see the Fab Four figures from our perch halfway up the side of the hill. There were actually two kinds of Beatlemaniacs, screamers and criers. Most were screamers, but we were criers. Just as frenzied as the rest, jumping up and down and clapping, singing and dancing to She Loves You and You Can't Do That, but crying while we did it. In the girl chatter in the restroom afterward, we heard someone say the Beatles were staying in a house in Bel Air, an exclusive West LA neighborhood filled with old movie star mansions. So after the concert, we decided to drive up Sunset Boulevard to see if we could find the house. When we got to the entrance to Bel Air, we noticed a cab parked just inside the white gates. We pulled up behind it, got out, and through his open window, we begged the driver to tell us where the Beatles were staying, while dancing around in the street saying, "Please, please, please," 100 times, like only teenage girls could do. Finally, with a grin, he told us they were in a house on St. Pierre Road, just up the street and around the corner. Thank you. Thank you, thank you. We ran back to the car, jumped in, and off we went. We found the house easily, drove by it slowly, and then around the block, checking it out a couple of times, trying to see how many people might have the same idea we did. Now, there were a couple of parked cars, but otherwise it looked quite peaceful, so we talked it over and made the executive decision to go to a gas station bathroom to brush our hair and put on white lipstick so that when we saw them, we would look good. Oh, that white lipstick. So it was around 9 p.m. when we got back, all glammed up for our adventure. It was a warm summer night with a full moon, and we parked and tried to figure out the best approach. It never for 1 minute occurred to us to knock on the front door. We knew from Tiger Beat magazine that that wasn't how it was done. Tiger Beat magazine was a teenage magazine for years and years that featured teenage musicians and actors and actresses. I don't even know if that's still around, but it was around in my time too. So through a series of neighborhood adventures, which included meeting a 10-year-old girl who proved very helpful later on, we found the guest cottage belonging to the main house where the Beatles were staying. A small pink stucco cottage with white trim windows and a brick patio surrounded by ferns and small orange trees. We had to get by the front door of that cottage in order to get to the path that led to the backyard of the Beatles' house. We weren't the trespassing type, so we knocked on the screen door to ask for permission to follow a path through their yard that led up to the main house and the Beatles. The lady who came to the door was older, elegant, with white upswept hair. She spoke slowly and had an accent like Greta Garbo in Ninochka. I think that might be Russian, Ninochka. I may be mispronouncing that, but she talked to us for a while and told us she was from Russia, and she was the daughter of a Russian princess and had been a ballerina. She said we seemed like nice girls, and it was fine with her if we went to her garden. The main house was hers, too. She'd rented it to the Beatles. So happy. With leaping hearts, we turned to go, but then she said, "Just a minute, girls." She meant girls. "I should ask my husband." The girls slimped dramatically and took deep breaths, thinking, "Oh, please don't do that." She called to her husband from the door. Reggie came lumbering out, an imposing, craggy-faced man with flyaway eyebrows and a permanently furrowed forehead, whom I recognized as the English movie star Reginald Owen. Appropriately, as it turned out, he once played Scrooge in the movie of the same name. He looked at us in our cute plaid skirts and bobbed hair as though we had just dropped in from outer space. He frowned with an expression that said, "You brought me out here for this?" The ballerina did all the talking. "The girls want to go up to the back stairs and see what the Beatles are doing. Can we let them do that, dear?" He turned from her to look us up and down, shaking his head at what he saw, and mumbled gruffly, "I don't think it's a good idea." Crestfallen and a bit anxious and already plotting an alternative plan, we weren't that nice. We watched him disappear back into the dim recesses of the cottage of doom. The Russian ballerina, still beautiful and erect in her 70s, or something like that. She was probably only 40, but to us she was ancient, and he was 165. She saw how disappointed we were and put her finger to her lips as if to say, "Shh," while stealing a furtive glance back through the screen door. She leaned toward us confidently and said quietly, "Oh, Gulls, he didn't mean that. You go ahead." Wasn't that wonderful? I wanted to be just like her when I grew up. Blessings on you, Mrs. Reginald Owen. Up the stairs we flew, ducking down and running like soldiers across enemy lines, trying to stay in the shadows while traversing an acre of garden that stood between us and the house. We got behind some bushes just in time to see the Beatles get out of the pool, dripping wet and lit by the full moon, wearing tiny little English bathing suits. They ran single file across the lawn, up the porch stairs, and into the house. We were paralyzed in our hiding place, clutching each other's arms, ears ringing, breathless at the sight. Can you just imagine that? Neither of us moved a muscle until after they were inside, and suddenly Karen took off, she and her shadow zigzagging across the lawn, knees bent, staying low as she ran from bush to bush, almost dying of silent laughter, hissing at her to "Stop it, please stop it." I followed her lead. We got braver as we got closer to the house and realized we could see no one and no one could see us. We broke for the stairs to the porch that probably they called a veranda. It was a mansion, 2 stories, but the part we could see looked like this. So there was the porch, that was them, that was the French doors, piano people party, and the dining room, and then this way was the pool. Oh, this right here says Naked John makes entrance from the top of the stairs. So that comes into play in just a minute. So the curtains were closed in what we found out later was the dining room, and also in the living room where someone was playing the piano, and a few people were singing and harmonizing to the Everly Brothers. Whenever I want you, all I have to do is dream. We could only hear but not see what was going on. Maybe it was the Everly Brothers. There was a long bank of uncurtained floor-to-ceiling windows in front of us, with 4 French doors in the middle. On the other side of the glass, we had a clear view of the hallway connecting the living room and dining room, and straight across from where we were standing was a staircase to the 2nd floor. No one was in the hall or on the stairs. We were sort of hanging out there, listening to the music, glancing through the windows while dancing and whispering, making up ideas of what was going to happen next, smothering our laughter almost to the point of pants sweating, when suddenly there was movement inside, and we stopped and looked up. Bopping down the stairs, happy as a naked lark on a birdbath day, came John Lennon, barefooted, no shirt, no pants, just wearing his underwear. Can you just imagine? Oh my gosh. This was 1964, almost the very first day of the swinging 60s. Only yesterday it was the 50s. The swinging had not even really commenced yet, and we at the time did not see strange boys in their underwear. It was quite a shock because, after all, he was a grown man, and he was John Lennon. Plus, the worst thing was we were having eye contact, and he was in his knickers. Actually, to be exact, because inquiring minds want to know, they were tighty-whities. I hope I popped no balloons with this inside information. You'd probably rather not know. I know. It's how I felt. I was so surprised. I stared into his eyes, shocked and speechless, and he was pretty surprised too, because though he didn't stop moving, he looked right back at us. I'm sure he was thrilled to see us on his porch. I mean, who wouldn't be? At the bottom of the stairs, John turned and walked past us into the living room where the music was. Do people walk around practically in their birthday suits at these parties? We had to wonder. And must have told somebody about us, because a man came and opened the door to the porch where we were lurking, probably too weak to move, and sweetly said, "Girls, it's late. You should come back tomorrow." And although we had come a mile and a day crossing the blurry line between reality and fantasy to get there, we said, "Oh yes, we're so sorry, we will," and off we went. But we were happy because we saw the Beatles almost naked, practically swimming, and after all, we were invited back. Flushed with success, we drove home on the 405, down the hill into the valley, a million tiny city lights in front of us, windows down, the big moon in a sapphire sky. KRLA on the radio was singing along to "Do You Wanna Know a Secret?" including all the do-a-doos. Happy, 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 and plotting how we were going to do it again the next day. Oh my goodness. Okay. So I spent the whole next day begging my father for the use of the car. My mother was not qualified to give this kind of permission. It was above her pay scale. So I was forced to call my dad at his office. I was walking on eggshells because my father did not like to be called at work by his children, especially when we were in begging mode. But as you can see, this was a teenage emergency, and I was willing to risk anything to get what I needed in order to be happy in life. And all happiness, at least for that day, depended on this one thing. All day it was no, 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 and no. But Karen was depending on me. When I wasn't on the phone with my dad, I was on the phone with her, getting encouragement, i.e., "But we have to call him back." We never gave up, and finally, around 4 p.m., the begging paid off. He said, "Okay, yes, I could take the car," with about 50 rules attached. I leaped for joy and called Karen and screamed, "He said yes." We jumped in the station wagon and back we went over the hill to Bel Air on a mission. By that time now, the whole world knew where the Beatles were staying. No parking was allowed inside the gates at all. Sunset Boulevard was a traffic jam, and kids overflowed the sidewalks and swarmed the streets. We had to think, how do we do this? We found a parking spot a couple of blocks over and walked back through the gates. There were police on every street, but they weren't stopping anyone from walking around. The other kids didn't know where to go, but we had experience and a general lay of the land. We went around the bend towards the house on St. Pierre, and as luck would have it, we ran smack into the 10-year-old girl I mentioned earlier, the one we'd met while exploring the neighborhood the night before, a neighborhood which this little girl knew like the back of her sweet little hand. "So, show us how to get to the Beatles' house from here," we asked our new best friend, voices low in case anyone was listening. We wanted them to ourselves. "Only if you got to take me with you," she replied, quick as a bunny, L.A. girl, already genius at the art of the deal. The three of us turned into a side street, careful to ditch any onlookers or followers, and then when we were in a good position and able to dodge the eyes of the police, we jumped into the bushes. Up through the backyards we went, the kid leading the way. She bypassed the guest house completely and brought us in through another yard, and we suddenly recognized our surroundings. Then the three of us ran up to the porch where Karen and I had been the night before. It was late afternoon, and this time the curtains were all open, as were the French doors. We could see in every room. There were maybe 15 people, all much older than us. Some were on the porch milling around the dining room table, and it was a little reception or something. But here we were, ta-da, on their porch like the Fuller Brush Man. I really don't know what people must have thought of us. It seems so rude to me now, but they were nice to us and said, "Hello, girls." We almost felt expected. We definitely felt welcome. Lucky for us, the concept of stalker was something from the future. There weren't even groupies in 1964. One by one, the boys came on the porch to say hello until we were more or less surrounded by them. Oh, so good to be surrounded by beetles. Can you imagine? Can you imagine? Think of your very favorite song group and just imagine being put in that situation with them. That's how this was with the Beatles. Okay, they were wearing tight black pants and buttoned up shirts. George had on a vest. They looked like themselves, totally recognizable, all around 23, adorable like their photos, with cute bouncy hair, long and sideburns. Now, they didn't know us, but we knew everything there was to know about them. We knew how old they were, that they used to be the Silver Beatles, that John was married and had a baby named Julian, and Paul had a girlfriend named Jane, and they went to nightclubs with birds. They'd lived in Germany, and gear meant good. We'd heard them talk on TV, and their Liverpool accents were even better in person. Ringo spread his fingers on both hands and showed us his rings, and Paul, with his shiny hair, big eyes, and eyebrows like bird wings, shook hands with all three of us. Of course, this means it's been over 50 years since I washed my hands, but hey. George had beautiful brown eyes and seemed shy, which made us even shyer. And John didn't seem to remember us from the night before. Thank God. We didn't want to relive the underwear incident. He was handsome with his clothes on. There was mischief in his brown eyes. And he started showing off to the little girl. He put his hands under his armpits, making his elbows into wings, which he flapped and then barked. And we all laughed. So great, laughing with the Beatles. Our nervousness and excitement about meeting them and finally being there left us speechless. And I know for a fact I would be no better at it if this all happened today. They tried to put us at ease, asking us how old we were and where we went to school. We managed to tell them that we were just 17, saying as few awkward words as possible, trying not to cry, faint, drool, or scream. They offered each of us an autographed group picture, which they told us they signed on the plane over from England. I asked for an extra for my oldest sister, Paula, who was 7 at the time. And crazy about the Beatles, and they gave it to me. And then, like good girls, we left. Thank you so much. Goodbye. Met the Beatles. Check. We thanked the little girl, and she gave us each a hug and scampered off across the lawn, heading for home with a pretty good story to tell. And that is her autographed picture that she received. Walking back to the car through the manicured, tree-lined streets of Bel Air, we were jumping and leaping and twirling and making little screaming noises when it suddenly occurred to us that what we had done could be illegal. If the police found out, they might take away our autographed photos, so we quieted down and hid them in our clothes. We walked by a policeman as unobtrusively as we could, but I guess he could tell we were excited, or he heard our squeals from a block over, because he came toward us, eyes wide and twinkling, eyebrows up, very interested, like he knew. "Did you meet him?" He said it exactly the same way. Oh my gosh. He said it exactly the same way a 15-year-old girl would, almost shaking with excitement. Oh my goodness. Despite the extra-large LAPD uniform with gold badge and big black holster in his heart, he was one of us. And we said yes. And we pulled out our signed photos to show him, and he was as thrilled as we were. Wow, you got their autographs? The big smile and obvious excitement of the grown man in a cop uniform made it even better. Good for you, girls, he said. Hey, they met them, he yelled to his partner at the other end of the street, pointing with both hands at the tops of our heads. All right, the partner hollered. Back to jumping and leaping and twirling and making little screaming noises we went. We never saw the little girl again. We decided the only explanation is that she was our guardian angel. We drove back to real life, over the hill and into the valley with the windows down and the wind blowing our hair. KFWB blaring, All My Lovin', the song the Beatles sang on Ed Sullivan, and we knew it by heart. We felt so lucky. We felt changed, and we felt lucky for life. Oh my gosh, can you imagine? Can you imagine? So if you are a Beatles fan, you know the emotion. I think I'd be a crier if I was going to a Beatles concert. You know the emotion associated with that. And if you're not a Beatles fan, I think you will be. After this, right? Am I right? So I hope you enjoyed that. I hope you enjoyed that. It is so fun to read that again. And there is another young man that I have been watching on YouTube, and I cannot remember his name, and I'm embarrassed that I can't remember it right now. But anyway, I just subscribed to him last week. He was telling a book list of his favorite summer reads, and I was so happy to see him getting choked up when he was retelling some of his favorite books too, because I realized that there are more people like me who get that way when they read something that is so well written like that, but more importantly, that you can identify with like that too. And so I totally identify with that. So anyway, I hope that y'all enjoyed that. If you are a Beatles fan, what is your favorite Beatles song? And then who was your favorite Beatle? Let me know down in the comment section. I'll leave mine down in there, and I'd love to hear what yours are too. So with that, my friends, I hope that you enjoyed that. I think that you probably did, because I certainly did, and I hope that carries through this video. Grab this book. Seriously, grab the book, because it's full of stories like this in here. There are some heartbreaking stories in here too. Nothing, to do with terrible heartbreak. Well, no, that's not true. No death, I should say. Just, heartbreak about love lost. But I really think you'll enjoy it. I really do think you will love it. My daughter, I've been trying to get her to read it because she reminds me of a young Susan Branch. And again, she lived in California in the 50s and 60s and had one of those idyllic childhoods from that era. And I think that you will enjoy the book club also that Kim is going to be doing this July with that same book. And again, it is called Susan Branch's The Fairy Tale Girl. And you can find it on Amazon or Thrift Books or your local library, I'm sure. Thank you for watching, my friends. Y'all take good care, and give this video a like if you enjoyed it. I'll see you on the next one. Bye-bye.